Top 1. The Light Speed Breaker. In 1997, deep beneath the Apennine Mountains of Italy, inside the Gran Sasso National Laboratory, a little-known theoretical physicist named Dr. Emil Varga conducted an experiment that was never meant to attract attention. The project was officially listed as a minor timing calibration study connected to long baseline neutrino detection. Unofficially, it became one of the most unsettling anomalies ever recorded inside a European physics facility. Varga was assigned to analyze neutrino arrival times using a modified synchronization protocol that most senior researchers considered redundant. The experiment involved sending neutrinos across a fixed distance and measuring their arrival using atomic clock references calibrated through laser ranging. During one late-night session, Varga noticed something that made no physical sense. A cluster of neutrinos appeared to arrive earlier than light would have traveled the same distance under identical conditions. At first, the result was dismissed as instrument drift. Varga recalibrated the clocks, replaced fiber optic cables, and repeated the measurements over multiple cycles. The anomaly remained. The difference was small, measured in nanoseconds, but it was consistent. According to his private research notes, later referenced in an internal inquiry, the particles were arriving faster than the universal speed limit defined by modern physics. The implications were immediate and disturbing. If even one particle could exceed the speed of light, the principle of causality would be compromised. Cause and effect would no longer be fixed. Time itself would become unstable at a fundamental level. Varga documented his findings carefully, but avoided submitting them through official academic channels. Instead, he requested additional experimental time in tighter isolation from the main research team. 3 days after his final recorded entry, Dr. Varga entered the laboratory at 3:42 in the morning. Security logs confirm his access badge was used. Surveillance cameras captured him walking into the underground corridor carrying a metal briefcase. No footage ever showed him leaving. Later that same day, external personnel arrived at the facility. They were not listed as university staff or civilian contractors. Laboratory technicians reported that sensitive equipment had been removed from Varga's workspace, including the modified spectrometer and timing hardware. His computer drives were confiscated. His office was sealed under a containment notice that cited procedural violations without explanation. An official statement released weeks later claimed that Dr. Varga had suffered from acute psychological stress and had taken an extended leave from research. No hospital records were produced. No travel documentation was found. His family reported that they were advised not to pursue further inquiries and were told his work involved national-level research interests. Years later, fragments of a timing protocol nearly identical to Varga's design surfaced in a classified defense research patent filed without attribution. The original research data has never been recovered. If Dr. Varga truly observed particles exceeding the speed of light, the discovery would have rewritten the laws of physics. Instead, the experiment vanished, and so did the man who conducted it. Top 2. The Consciousness Camera. In the summer of 2008, at a private neuroscience conference in Kyoto, Japan, an unassuming engineer named Takashi Morimoto introduced a device he simply called the field lens. According to Morimoto, it could capture what he described as conscious energy fields, a claim that instantly blurred the line between neuroscience, quantum physics, and metaphysics. His short demonstration was not part of the official schedule. It was held in a small, dimly lit side room with no press, no cameras, and only a handful of attendees. But those who were there never forgot what they saw. Morimoto placed the lens in front of a volunteer's forehead, then dimmed the lights. After a short delay, an image formed on a projection screen connected to the device. It was not a thermal scan, not an MRI overlay, nor a digital recreation. What appeared was a swirling, translucent shape hovering inches above the subject's skin, like a cloud made of colorless flame. The image fluctuated with the subject's breathing and seemed to respond to emotional stimuli. When a second subject entered the room in an agitated state, the shape immediately sharpened and pulsed. It wasn't just imaging, it was interaction. The field lens used a combination of near-infrared spectroscopy, low-frequency electromagnetic pulses, and a proprietary sensor grid that Morimoto refused to patent. According to the few notes that survived the event, his theory involved brain-generated quantum echo patterns that extended beyond the skull and into a reactive spatial envelope. He believed consciousness was not fully confined to the body and that it could be visually recorded. The reaction from the scientific community was swift and brutal. Official attendees of the conference distanced themselves from the presentation, calling it irresponsible and lacking in empirical basis. Morimoto's research assistant was reportedly fired from his university position within a week. A month later, the small research facility Morimoto operated in the outskirts of Osaka closed permanently. Local news reported that the building was purchased by an unnamed corporate buyer and repurposed for data security testing. All of the equipment inside was removed overnight. By the end of that year, Morimoto himself had vanished. He was never officially declared missing, but no new research, interviews, or public appearances ever followed. Attempts to contact him were answered only by disconnected phone lines and shuttered addresses. His personal website went offline. The only remnant of his work, a grainy photograph allegedly taken during the demonstration, resurfaced in 2017 on a message board for fringe consciousness research, but its authenticity was never confirmed. What happened that night in Kyoto remains a subject of quiet speculation among those who believe that the boundary between the mind and the physical world is thinner than science admits. If Morimoto's device truly glimpsed something outside the brain, a non-local consciousness field, then it not only redefines psychology, but challenges the very nature of human identity. And if that is true, then the reason for his disappearance may not be disbelief. It may be fear. Top 3, the fifth dimension. Mathematician in 2003, a rising German mathematician named Dr. Ulrich Neuberg presented an unpublished paper during a closed-door session at the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, Italy. The document, titled Topological Bridges Beyond Four-Space, proposed a framework for interacting with a fifth spatial dimension, not as a mathematical abstraction, but as a manipulable domain within controlled environments. Neuberg claimed that this fifth dimension was already influencing certain quantum behaviors, and with precise conditions, it could be temporarily accessed. The audience, composed of physicists and mathematicians from elite institutions, reacted with a mixture of skepticism and unease. Unlike string theory, which treats higher dimensions as compact and hidden, Neuberg's model treated the fifth dimension as folded but puncturable. He proposed that with high-frequency torsion fields and an adaptive crystalline lattice, it might be possible to create a microportal, a temporary rift, in the geometry of local space. He showed no prototypes, but the mathematics were described as too elegant to ignore by one anonymous attendee. Within weeks, Neuberg received an influx of interest, including private invitations from military research branches and think tanks. He declined them all. Instead, he returned to his remote countryside home in Saxony and stopped responding to emails and phone calls. His university profile was deleted without notice. His personal website displayed only a blank white page with a single line of text. Topology can collapse from within. Then one winter morning in February 2004, a neighbor noticed the windows of Neuberg's home were covered in reflective foil. No smoke rose from the chimney despite freezing temperatures. When police were called to perform a wellness check, they found the house empty. There were no signs of struggle. All furniture and equipment had been removed. The basement, reportedly where Neuberg conducted his private experiments, had been stripped to bare concrete. The only thing left behind was a sheet of calculations etched directly into the floor with a soldering iron, equations that have never been fully solved. His disappearance was never formally investigated. No missing persons report was filed. His last known academic collaborator stated in a brief interview, Ulrich was chasing a geometry that didn't want to be seen. Years later, a patent filed under an untraceable holding company in Luxembourg revealed a design resembling Neuberg's lattice structure. It referenced concepts of nonlinear distance compression and trans-spatial resonance. The patent was never granted, and the application was withdrawn without explanation. If Neuberg truly discovered a method of breaching the dimensional fabric of our reality, his vanishing is more than symbolic. It may have been the first recorded instance of a human slipping between dimensions, or the last time anyone dared to try. Top 4. The Magnetic Field Engineer. In 1984, in a quiet industrial suburb of Toronto, an electrical engineer named Martin Kessler announced what he described as a closed-loop magnetic induction engine, capable of producing continuous rotational force without any external fuel. The demonstration took place in a rented warehouse before a small group of independent inventors, one skeptical journalist, and a camera crew from a now-defunct local science television program. The prototype was a bulky metallic cylinder with concentric magnetic rings. When activated, it began spinning and did not stop. No cords were visible. No power input could be detected. Kessler claimed the device drew energy from fluctuating magnetic fields in the Earth's crust, a system he referred to as ambient magnetic harvesting. The video footage was never aired. Shortly after the event, the television station was purchased by a larger network, and the episode featuring Kessler's engine was pulled indefinitely from the broadcast schedule. The journalist who covered the event, Anna Del Mare, later wrote a blog post recalling how engineers from an unnamed government liaison group requested all her notes, citing national energy security. Kessler, meanwhile, applied for a patent and was immediately denied. The explanation listed was, "Perpetual motion machines are non-patentable by statute." But Kessler insisted his design was not perpetual motion. It was conversion through a mechanism science hadn't recognized yet. Within months, he began to receive legal notices. A major energy consortium accused him of violating intellectual property related to electromagnetic turbine systems. Lawsuits piled up. His funding was cut off. Bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Kessler gave a final public statement during a community forum saying, "I did not invent a miracle. I revealed a blind spot." Then he disappeared. His home in Scarborough was found abandoned. All documentation, blueprints, and machine parts were gone. Neighbors reported unmarked vans removing crates during the night 2 days prior. The local police declined to investigate, citing no signs of foul play. When Del Mare attempted to follow up, she was told that Kessler had relocated under duress, and that further inquiry was not in the interest of public order. Years later, one of the attendees of that 1984 demonstration came forward with a copy of the video. But before it could be published, it was flagged and removed from every major video platform. Attempts to re-upload it resulted in instant takedowns for copyright violations attributed to unknown rights holders. Even offline archives were reportedly corrupted. The footage has not resurfaced since. If Kessler's invention truly harvested the Earth's magnetic field to produce clean, limitless motion, then its disappearance represents not just the silencing of one man, but the suppression of a world-changing technology. And the question that still echoes is not how it worked, but who decided the world should never see it again? Top 5. The Sonic Cell Healer. In 2011, a biophysicist named Dr. Alejo Barragan made waves within a small but curious medical circle in Buenos Aires, after unveiling a device that allegedly restored damaged human tissue using nothing but precisely calibrated sound frequencies. At first, it sounded like science fiction, but the preliminary trials, some of which were documented in a private hospital affiliated with the University of La Plata, showed rapid cell regeneration in muscle tissue subjected to microtears and localized burns. The mechanism, as Barragan described it, relied on high-resolution acoustic targeting that induced oscillation in cellular membranes, accelerating protein synthesis and mitochondrial repair. The most striking demonstration involved a patient with second-degree burns. Over the course of 3 sessions using the sonic device, the wound surface area reportedly decreased by over 60%, with no scarring and no pharmacological intervention. Medical observers present at the trial were astonished, yet no publication followed. No peer-reviewed journal accepted the paper, and none of the trial data appeared in public databases. Within 2 weeks, the university rescinded its collaboration, citing concerns over methodological transparency. Barragan was quietly removed from the research faculty. Not long after, he attempted to present the findings at a regenerative medicine symposium in Geneva. Upon arrival, his luggage was seized for security screening. The presentation slot was canceled without explanation. He returned to Argentina visibly shaken and retreated into isolation. Colleagues who visited his private laboratory in the outskirts of Tigre reported increased security, including surveillance cameras and biometric locks, unusual for a man known for his open-door approach to science. Then came the accident. In October 2012, local news outlets reported that Barragan's car had careened off a bridge into the Paraná River. The vehicle was located, but the body was never recovered. A closed casket funeral was held, with government representatives in quiet attendance. His lab was sealed. Official reports claimed the accident was due to a mechanical failure, but mechanics familiar with his vehicle stated that it had been serviced just days before. Whispers soon circulated that several pieces of Barragan's equipment had been relocated to a defense contractor facility north of Córdoba. These rumors were never confirmed. However, in 2015, a declassified Argentine military document briefly referenced a non-invasive biological accelerator, before being redacted in subsequent versions. If Barragan's device had indeed unlocked the ability to heal human tissue without surgery or drugs, its implications would have reshaped medicine entirely. No more organ waiting lists, no more irreversible injuries, no more degenerative decline, and yet all traces of his work dissolved into silence. Was it too disruptive for modern healthcare systems built on chronic treatment? Or did he stumble upon a biological truth that someone, somewhere, decided the world was not ready to use? Top 6. The Thought Transfer Physicist. In 1995, within the neurophysics wing of the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, a young experimental physicist named Dr. Lucien Artaud began testing what he called non-local information fields, a term that, at the time, sounded more philosophical than scientific. Artaud believed that under certain conditions, two human brains could share data without any physical connection. His theory combined quantum entanglement models with neurochemical resonance, hypothesizing that thought, once stabilized into measurable waveforms, could be transmitted and received like radio signals. To prove it, he built a system of two isolation pods equipped with full-spectrum EEG, ultra-low-frequency signal emitters, and layered Faraday shielding to block all known electromagnetic interference. Two volunteers were placed inside, one with a simple geometric shape in mind, the other instructed to describe whatever image came to them. Over dozens of trials, the receiver correctly identified the sender's mental target at rates statistically impossible to ignore. Artaud kept the test secret for over a year, gathering data without institutional oversight. But once results began leaking through internal channels, he was summoned before an ethics board and accused of conducting unsanctioned human experimentation. Funding was revoked, equipment was confiscated, and yet just 1 week later, he was scheduled to present a reworked theory paper titled Cognitive Interference in Non-Local Fields at a symposium in Zurich. He never arrived. The night before his flight, Artaud reportedly locked himself inside his research apartment in Toulouse. According to building maintenance records, the lock was never disengaged. No one saw him leave. When police forced entry days later, they found the apartment untouched, food still warm on the table, and his personal laptop missing. There were no signs of struggle or escape. Only one anomaly stood out. On the wall above his workspace, the words, "It worked," had been written in blue chalk. CNRS issued no public statement. His name was quietly removed from research registries. A few months later, a new neuroscience startup in California released a vague announcement about their work in synthetic empathy protocols, sparking theories that Artaud's work had been redirected and buried under layers of corporate ownership. None of the founders acknowledged his involvement, and when a former CNRS technician tried to contact them, their correspondence ceased without reply. If Artaud truly demonstrated thought-to-thought communication, the potential applications span from medical breakthroughs in locked-in patients to weaponized cognitive warfare. But the implications are more than technological. If thoughts can leap from one mind to another, then privacy, identity, and even autonomy collapse. Perhaps that is why his name vanished overnight. Perhaps some thoughts were never meant to be shared. Top 7. The DNA Harmonizer. In 2006, in a dimly lit sound laboratory on the outskirts of Bern, Switzerland, a Swiss-Czech geneticist named Dr. Helena Zelena claimed to have unlocked something previously thought impossible: the ability to alter gene expression in living human cells using complex harmonic frequencies. Her theory, built on emerging epigenetic frameworks, suggested that DNA could respond not only to chemical signals, but to precise patterns of vibration, akin to a kind of biological music. Selena was no outsider. She held dual PhDs in molecular biology and acoustic physics, with published research in top journals. Her experiments were conducted under tight controls, using fibroblast cells exposed to carefully calibrated sound waves emitted by a proprietary transducer. After prolonged exposure, the cells began expressing dormant genes, genes associated with repair, anti-inflammatory responses, and even regenerative properties. Her most controversial claim was that certain frequencies cause partial telomere restoration, theoretically reversing cellular aging. She never submitted her findings for publication. Instead, she presented her work at a closed session with an elite consortium of biotech investors in Geneva. Witnesses at the meeting later described the room as electrified with tension. Some attendees pushed for rapid commercialization, others were deeply disturbed by the implications. Days later, Zelena withdrew from all contact. Her lab in Bern was found abandoned 2 weeks after the meeting. Her research servers were wiped clean. Her backup drives, previously stored in a fireproof safe, were missing. Local police were called to investigate a break-in, but no formal report was filed. Surveillance cameras on the property had been disabled for over 72 hours before the incident. Zelena's name quietly disappeared from university rosters. Her academic email account returned only automated replies, and her social profiles were deleted. Former colleagues stated that she had moved to a private research position overseas, though no institute confirmed her employment. Years later, a scientific white paper published anonymously on a deep science forum described a similar set of acoustic gene modulation techniques using nearly identical terminology. The file was online for only 8 hours before being taken down. Speculation about what happened to Zelena remains divided. Some believe she was silenced due to the disruptive nature of her discovery. Others think she may have sold her research to a biotech group operating in legal gray zones. A smaller group of theorists insists she is still working, somewhere underground, refining her method to be applied not just to healing, but to human enhancement. If Zelena's discovery was real, she may have uncovered the first practical key to rewriting our own biology using sound alone. And if that key now lies in the wrong hands, then what was once a whisper in a laboratory could become the signal that redefines what it means to be human. Top 8. The Invisibility Field Researcher. In 1992, inside a classified optics laboratory in the Mojave Desert, a physicist named Dr. Raymond Collier claimed to have achieved something that had only existed in speculative defense theory, rendering an object effectively invisible to the naked eye. His method did not involve light-bending, metamaterials, or digital camouflage. Instead, he reportedly created a field that disrupted the observer's visual processing by manipulating spatial phase differentials around a physical object, essentially convincing the brain that there was nothing to see. The breakthrough allegedly occurred during a series of tests on a containment pod lined with polarized reflective mesh. When exposed to synchronized microwave interference and pulsed electromagnetic feedback, observers in a controlled viewing room described the pod as shimmering, then simply gone. The equipment confirmed that the object remained physically present. Sensors still detected its mass, heat, and acoustic echo. Yet visually it was absent, as if reality itself had flinched. Collier filed a confidential report and requested an extended testing phase. But rather than being approved, he was placed under mandatory psychiatric evaluation. The official diagnosis claimed a stress-induced dissociative episode. His clearance was suspended. The project was reassigned. But colleagues who reviewed the test data said nothing in the logs supported psychological instability. What they saw was a discovery that defied known optics and challenged the fundamental relationship between observation and reality. 3 months later, Collier disappeared. The facility reported that he had been discharged and returned home to Arizona, but his residence was empty, mail piled up. His vehicle remained parked outside, untouched. A neighbor reported seeing 2 unmarked vans outside the house the night before Collier vanished. Security footage from the area was wiped. No official missing person case was filed. Shortly after, all references to his invisibility research were scrubbed from internal documentation. Even informal mentions in internal communications were deleted. Employees who brought up Collier's name in meetings were warned against spreading classified disinformation. The lab division he worked in was restructured, renamed, and absorbed into a larger research group whose budget was quadrupled over the next fiscal year. Then came the most unsettling detail. A maintenance worker at the original test facility reportedly found Collier's lab coat sealed in a storage locker. Inside the pocket was a single photograph, the test chamber, empty, with a handwritten note scrawled on the back. It read, "What you see isn't always what is there. What is there isn't always seen." If Collier had truly developed a field that could manipulate perception itself, the implications would be vast: military, scientific, psychological. But more than that, it would force a re-evaluation of the trust we place in our senses. And perhaps that is the most dangerous kind of invisibility. Not the erasure of objects, but the erasure of truth. Top 9. The Cold Fusion Revivalist. In 2009, a reclusive chemist named Dr. Semyon Resnik emerged from a decade of silence to present a bold claim at an obscure alternative energy summit in Vilnius, Lithuania. Resnik, once affiliated with the Russian Academy of Sciences, had allegedly replicated a stable cold fusion reaction in a tabletop device using palladium electrodes submerged in heavy water. Unlike earlier, widely discredited attempts in the 1980s, Resnik's setup included real-time calorimetric readings, neutron detection, and what he described as delta temperature yield beyond chemical possibility. According to attendees, the demonstration took place behind closed doors. A compact metal chamber emitted sustained heat far exceeding the known input energy. Radiation sensors picked up subtle but consistent neutron activity, a hallmark signature of nuclear reaction. Resnik claimed his system could generate kilowatts of excess energy with no radiation leakage and no waste. He spoke softly without spectacle. He concluded his talk by saying, "We have always assumed the future of energy must explode, but perhaps it hums instead." What followed was silence. The conference organizers received legal threats from a consortium of energy investors within 48 hours. The hosting venue canceled all future science events. Resnik declined all interview requests. His notes, which had been handed out on printed sheets, were later found to contain deliberate errors, a precaution he admitted privately to one journalist, so they would not be able to steal it all at once. Shortly thereafter, Resnik's apartment in Riga was reportedly broken into. He was unharmed but visibly shaken. Friends described him as paranoid, convinced he was under surveillance. He ceased communication with colleagues, closed his research facility, and withdrew from public life. Then in early 2010, an obituary appeared in a local newspaper. It stated that Resnik had died of a heart attack in his home. No autopsy was made public. The funeral was private, closed to all but 2 unnamed individuals. When researchers attempted to locate the prototype cold fusion device, they found only a scorched lab bench and fragments of melted shielding. No blueprints were recovered. In the years that followed, multiple energy startups quietly filed patents that echoed Resnik's earlier phrasing. Low-temperature plasma catalysis, lattice-assisted nuclear transmutation, and anomalous heat generation under heavy water saturation. None of them acknowledged his work. All operated behind shells of intellectual property firms. If Dr. Semyon Resnik truly harnessed cold fusion, even briefly, he may have solved the planet's energy crisis in a device the size of a shoebox. But instead of sparking a revolution, his discovery disappeared into a haze of denial, suppression, and plausible deniability. And perhaps the final reaction he triggered was not in the lab, but in the systems built to ensure we never learn what is quietly possible. Top 10. The Time Compression Experimenter. In 1998, in a remote experimental facility deep within the Carpathian Mountains of Romania, a physicist named Dr. Istvan Corvin conducted a series of tests that he believed could compress the flow of time within a sealed chamber. His theory rested on the manipulation of localized temporal gradients using synchronized rotating electromagnetic fields and scalar wave pulses. Unlike traditional theories of time dilation, which rely on velocity or gravity, Corvin's approach involved the distortion of temporal perception by inducing a bubble where time passed more slowly relative to the outside world. The laboratory was privately funded, unlisted in national directories, and secured under layers of non-disclosure agreements. The test chamber, referred to as the chronocell in internal documents, was lined with a dense lattice of supercooled niobium coils and equipped with synchronized atomic clocks both inside and out. The first few tests involved simple objects: a candle flame, a melting ice cube, a watch. In each instance, the internal clock lagged behind its external counterpart by measurable margins, even after accounting for instrumental drift. Videos played back from the chamber appeared subtly slowed, almost imperceptibly at first, then with greater lag over consecutive trials. Corvin believed he had created not a time machine, but a temporal sink, a pocket where time itself flowed at a different rate. He theorized that with precise calibration, human exposure could be possible without harm. In his final documented experiment, he stepped inside the chronocell himself for what was intended to be a 60-minute exposure from the outside perspective. Inside the chamber, he expected to experience just a few minutes. The external clock ticked on. 60 minutes passed. The chamber remained sealed. When technicians opened the unit, they found it completely empty. There were no signs of malfunction, no breaches in the containment field, and no biological residue. Security footage confirmed that Corvin entered the chamber, but none showed him exiting. The data logs inside the unit had been wiped clean, and the internal camera displayed only static. Authorities were called, and the facility was shut down within days. All personnel were required to sign new confidentiality contracts. Equipment was dismantled and shipped to an undisclosed location. When Corvin's family requested information, they were told only that he had died during a classified experiment and that no remains were recoverable. No further research into temporal compression has been made public in Romania since. If Corvin's experiment was a success, he may have only experienced minutes while decades passed outside. Or perhaps he became trapped in a fragment of slowed time, unreachable by any known means. The mystery is not just where he went, but when. And if a man can vanish not through space, but through time itself, then the question is no longer whether time can be controlled. It is whether we already have and lost those who dared to test its limits. These 10 cases, scattered across continents and disciplines, may at first seem like isolated anomalies, but taken together, they reveal a disturbing pattern. Each scientist presented a breakthrough that defied conventional understanding. Technologies and theories that, if proven and widely adopted, would fundamentally rewrite the laws of physics, biology, or consciousness itself. And in every case, what followed was not recognition, but disappearance. Not debate, but erasure. This is not the natural course of scientific skepticism. It is a model of suppression, a system of containment so well practiced that it leaves no fingerprints. The names vanish from registries. The devices disappear from labs. The data is deleted, discredited, or bought up and buried. Some are labeled unstable, others simply missing. In each case, a moment of unimaginable possibility is quietly collapsed into silence. Who benefits from these disappearances? The fingerprints point to no single hand. Government agencies with opaque mandates, multinational corporations with vested interests, academic institutions bound by invisible pressure. These entities do not need to conspire in the open. They operate through inertia, bureaucracy, plausible deniability. A threat to the status quo, no matter how brilliant, is handled the same way every time. Marginalize, isolate, erase. But what has been lost in the process? Cures that could have ended degenerative disease, energy systems that could have made fossil fuels obsolete, machines that could have redefined space, time, or the very boundary between mind and matter. In each vanishing, humanity was denied a leap forward, and those who dared to take us there paid the price in silence. Even now, the suppression continues. The stories that reach us are just fragments, the few that slipped through cracks in the system. For every Collier, Zelena, or Corvin we learn about, how many have already disappeared without a trace, never mentioned, never mourned? These are not just mysteries. They are warnings, because the deeper question is not whether these discoveries were real. It is why they were considered too dangerous to be known. Who decides what knowledge is safe? Who determines what truths are allowed? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if truth can vanish so easily, how much of what we believe is merely what we've been permitted to remember? If these accounts of suppressed breakthroughs and vanished pioneers have changed the way you view the progress of our world, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We are dedicated to uncovering the history that they have tried so hard to bury. Join us in planting the seeds for a more transparent future. The next hidden treasure of knowledge will be revealed soon.